Today, we're sharing some special case studies about Ireland's democracy, presented by Penn State students. This is going to give you some insight into some of the successes of Ireland's democracy and some of the opportunities that are made possible by the McCourtney Institute for Democracy at Penn State. To help you understand what these projects are about, Andrew Kaehly, a rising sophomore in political science and philosophy, is going to give us a little background.
So each of the teams at the study abroad were given the task of creating a documentary, sort of synthesizing the reasons and investigating the potential causes for why Ireland's system of democracy was so successful, particularly with referendums and getting people to directly vote on things. And it's centered around this idea of the citizens' assemblies, which were created by citizens themselves, that were ways of getting people together to talk about issues in a productive way rather than on a debate stage.
First, we're going to hear from Percephany Devier-Pondexter, a rising sophomore and psych major, talking about education in Ireland and its impact on democracy.
So we compared the difference between how democracy affects education in America versus how it's affected in Ireland. And it was honestly really interesting to see because, like, obviously Ireland is a much smaller country. It has about 5 million people in the population compared to just like a state, for example, Pennsylvania. Here we have 13 million. So obviously a whole state here has a bigger population than their country. So their education system is taken very seriously. I think it's also taken seriously in America, but in kind of a different sense. So, um, like we focused on that and how it's very equal education based everywhere. So basically, like if you're in a rural area or a place like that, it's equal everywhere. But I feel like in America, if you're in a rural area, in an urban area, the education systems are different.
Now let's see how Persephone captured the essence of Ireland's education system in this short clip from her documentary.
Ireland's school system aims to educate citizens at a basic level to understand the fundamentals of government.
The Irish education system is very good, and if you go into let's say a high school, kids of say 17 years of age, you will get magnificent debate, and you will get magnificent views and an exchange of views.
Irish education teaches citizens social and economic issues, how the government can respond to these issues, and how they engage in meaningful discussion and deliberation. Knowing how the government operates and structures is crucial to democracy.
And how do you think this trip and project shaped your perspective or understanding of democracy or democratic values?
Honestly, it kind of opened my eyes about how well a democracy can truly work. I think in America right now, our politics are very polarized. So to see how, like for instance, their senators will go out to urban areas, they'll go out to farms, and they'll actually help the people in the town. So like they'll do community service with them. Um, they'll genuinely ask the people in the community like what they want, how they want to see their towns and cities ran. And I think that's very different because if you think about like the senators in America, it's very hard to have access to people like that because they're in such
Right.
higher power positions. But like any townsperson can walk into um, where the senators work and just talk to them. And I think that's like a really eye-opening experience to see, especially coming from such a big country. And I like come from a small town, so I couldn't imagine like any senator from America just like coming into my town and being like, "Hey, what do you want?" You know, they wouldn't probably do that every day.
Yeah, there's a disconnect that we often feel like we have from the people that are supposed to be representing us. So being able to have more direct contact with that, I think, strengthens people's view that they actually have a work or have a voice and vote inside of this democracy.
Exactly, which was really remarkable. I mean, I know they're a much smaller country, but it's still cool to see.
Next, we're going to hear again from Andrew Kaehly talking about the power of communities within Ireland's democracy.
We were really, really interested in the idea of accountability and also creating a sense of ethics surrounding how communities are able to build a message or build a vision for what they want to see come back to them with their vote, and how representatives were now more beholden to actually understanding that and to listening to people, and to whenever they go to the government and they're writing law or they're implementing it when they're a part of the executive portion of their legislature, they had that sense of accountability and duty to their community.
Tell me how the trip and the project shaped or changed your perspective on democracy.
We had thought going into Ireland that we knew almost exactly what democracy is supposed to look like. America is often touted as being the last word in democracy, or at the very least the pioneering face of it. And what we learned is that that's just not accurate in the way that they were doing democracy. We're very good at having a very diverse and wide-spanning array of cultures to reference, and we have a much, much larger system than Ireland will ever have necessarily. But I was completely surprised by the way that their system was known by everybody there. The way that things worked was understood by everybody there, which I just don't think is the case in the United States. And that's unfortunate. And it's a lot of what I think is the problem right now. It's a lot of what I'd imagine the McCourtney Institute is trying to fix. And it's one of the reasons why I think going to Ireland was so important, and why I think McCourtney understands that, is because we saw what happens when literacy becomes action. We saw what happens whenever the understanding of the democracy is that everybody gets a voice, and then that's actually practiced. That was really powerful. So that was definitely a bit of a shift for us staying there, but it was really, really interesting.
Here's a clip from Andrew's team's documentary looking at the community within Ireland.
Culture exists in this pre-political realm. Things that exist before we form political parties or decide on a governmental framework. But politics are the result of those deep roots taking place. What is important is the preservation of these shared values within policy. Because whereas the culture is this intrinsic, ever-present thing, policy is what is actually enforced on the day-to-day.
I never got involved in any of it to be a politician. I moved back to Ireland from the UK back in 2011, and I love where I grew up. I love the community. I love the way. Wouldn't it be great if we had this? And wouldn't it be great if this was different? And what you do is you end up going down a rabbit hole of, well, there's funding for that now, and there's funding for that. And it's probably the very same. It's the very same with most of the public representatives. You start saying, how can I make this small thing better? It's the small wins is why you do it, to try and make your community that little bit better and leave it better than how you found it.
The accessibility of the Irish government struck us when we visited the Oireachtas, and Ireland's intentionality of representation remains obvious in the voices of both representatives and the represented.
We have an open democracy in that people have access to their politicians, and that's something that we should really protect. You look at countries throughout the world, we want to pinch the country he come from. There are no protections, and that's sad to see. But it's because of the threats that there are in society at the moment. We have a really important job as politicians to explain the work that we do here, to communicate it back to people that we represent.
Accountability. How does Ireland enforce proper representation? It's a passive cultural link coming back into play. It isn't this forced accountability or simply political maneuvers. It's an ingrained set of values that they feel responsible to uphold.
Next, we're going to hear from Ava Loehr, who's going to discuss assimilation in Ireland.
We explored Ireland's culture of assimilation and kind of looked at some of the historical context of that with migration into Ireland as well, and how like some of the cultural and political scene of Ireland nowadays kind of influences that as well. Nowadays, at least when we were interviewing people in Ireland, there was this growing conversation about like the immigration crisis and how to address like housing needs and continuing that culture of accommodation in the face of that. However, we found that like it was interesting when talking with some of the um, when we got to visit some of the legislators at Leinster House. They talked about like still very much being dedicated to communicating with their communities and providing a inclusive environment for everyone, and still continuing that those conversations on that issue.
How did the trip and project shape your perspective and understanding of democracy?
It really kind of opened up like my view on how democracy can be more of like that building a community and fostering like advocacy. There's very much like a lot of conversation I think involved, like just from like talking with uh, many people and like conducting those interviews. It was really interesting to like see where conversations would kind of like take us, and just in general to just kind of have that openness and willingness to hear those ideas and concepts was really interesting to explore.
And here's a short clip from Ava's documentary looking at this culture of assimilation.
Looking at the question in terms of how as Irish people does our culture impact on the crisis we deal with both on a national and international stage, I'd go back to who we are as Irish people and go back the centuries, and we're a small island nation on the periphery of Europe, so we've been invaded quite a lot. If it wasn't the Vikings, it was the Normans. When the Normans came to these shores, they actually stayed for quite a while. There's a saying in this country that the Normans became more Irish than the Irish themselves.
For the past 2 weeks, our team of Penn State students have been studying Irish policies and practices, observing how they work together to influence Ireland's culture and democracy. Through our time here, we've had interactions with citizens of all different geographical backgrounds who spoke about immigrants in Ireland and the country's history of migration and assimilation. We're here in Ireland to find out what this culture of accommodation looks like today, with modern pressures like anti-immigrant rhetoric, an ongoing housing crisis, and rising anger. Which made us curious, can this culture of accommodation hold today with these modern pressures? Ireland has had a long history of assimilation, with many people coming and going over the years. The Loehr Gala, which translates a book of invasions in English, is a mythical text that tells the story of the people of Ireland. Over time, this text has been reworked with more historical material and has come to be accepted as a foundational text of Ireland, showing how citizens see Ireland as a place where people come to settle.
Finally, let's hear how the trip affected each of the students on a more personal level.
So personally, the trip honestly made me a much more confident person. I've always been a very outgoing person and been able to talk to anybody, but it was really cool to be able to go into any pub space, or like we went on a lot of hikes and stuff like that, and people were just very outgoing and genuine when you talk to them. It wasn't like I made a lot of friends there who I met once, and I'd be like, "Oh, like let's do something." And they'd be like, "Yeah, let's do something." And then they would actually follow up. But I feel like in America it's kind of like you could meet someone once and they'd be like, "Oh, let's do something." And then you never see them again. So it's just a very interdependent kind of community, which I think I liked more than the idea of the independence that we have here in America. And I think it was just like very different. Like the culture there is like, it was even interesting to see, like, you could go up to anybody in Dublin who's from there originally, and you could ask them a question about Dublin, and they would know a historical fact.
Mm.
I've lived in State College in this town my entire life, and if I went and somebody asked me a question about this town, I'd have no idea. So
Yeah.
it was just very cool to see.
So my family is from Ireland. I'm sure you'll hear everyone say, "Oh, I'm 70% Irish on my mom's side," and so that was a big motivator for me to want to go back. But I'm also a big fan of the United Kingdom and Ireland. That entire history, the struggle, the many conflicts, the retaliation, but then also like the reclamation of identity. And I think that Ireland in particular is a case of extraordinary odds being overcome. There's not very many societies in the world that have come back from a famine the way that they have been able to do. There's not many societies in the world that have a democracy like Ireland has. And personally, it was really nice to get to see places that my grandmother went whenever she was a kid with her family who were from Ireland. It was really good for me to see sort of that different side of what a government like ours could look like.
I think it definitely got me out of my comfort zone. It was my first time traveling abroad. And it really made me more excited to look for other opportunities to study abroad and get to immerse myself in another culture. Especially as like an artist and musician, having that opportunity to share my, I guess, like arts with others, as well as like participate in others like art and works is really exciting. I got to see a performance by their national something their orchestra group in
Amazing.
Dublin, which was like an incredible experience and really opened up my eyes to like what pursuing a career, I guess, in art and music could also look like. I just really enjoyed getting to talk with so many people. I don't um typically just like go up to people and just start asking questions. And even there, it was just having a conversation with other people. And it was really refreshing and like a very positive experience that to meet so many people just open to like sharing a bit about themselves with me. Um, and also made me like just more hopeful about like um opportunities to like create more dialogue with just also people here and how that could like help foster a community and foster democracy.
Just how grateful I am that we were able to make this happen. I know that the costs of going on a study abroad are usually pretty astronomical. And not only did the McCourtney Institute help to alleviate that, but they also made every cent that was spent completely worth it. The people we were able to network with, David Farrell and Jane Souter, who were the people that I told you had come up with the citizens' assemblies in the first place. They created that schematic. I never in a million years would I've ever thought I would meet them, let alone get to talk to them one-on-one and get their voices in an interview for our documentary. So that was amazing. Our tour guide was phenomenal. His name was Tom Sweeney. I could go on and on about all of the amazing things that I never would have been able to do, not only if I had just gone on the trip myself, but if I hadn't been given this opportunity through the Institute, through the College of Liberal Arts, and with the amazing professors. So I just want to express my gratitude and let everyone know that it was worth its weight.